Good evening, everyone. Thanks for turning out. Thank you, candidates. So I'm Merrill Wiseman, President of the Westmount Municipal Association. My great colleague Nigel Goddard is Vice President, and the wonderful Joanna Stasic and Maureen Keeley, Executive Board members and the keepers of institutional memory, and they keep us going. So this is certainly not our first rodeo, but it's been a tradition of WMA that we stage candidates' nights on all levels. The format is the same as it's always been. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. Questions and answers will come from you. There's a microphone there, and there's supposed to be a microphone there, but there isn't. But there will be, right?
They'll use yours.
They'll use mine. You just line up. If questions get too far afield or too crazy or not respectful, you can expect my pithy intervention. Sum up, after the Q&A, each of the candidates again will have 2-minute closing remarks. Just to save some time for them so they can get right to the issues, let me just introduce them from my trusty notes here. I will do this from right to left. Jennifer Maccarone at the right is the sitting MNA. She served as Liberal critic for families, LGBTQT issues, persons living with a disability or an autism spectrum disorder, diversity and inclusion, social solidarity, and the fight against poverty. And she's the mother of 2 young adults with autism. I don't know where with all that you have time for anything, but very good. She's committed to improving services for the most vulnerable. She's former president of the Quebec English School Board Association with over 20 years experience in marketing and communications. Hard. You can clap, and you can even clap to answers you like, and even some you don't like. You can let your displeasure be known. David Touchette, le candidat pour le Québec Solidaire. I should mention que Québec Solidaire est ici, mais la Coalition Avenir du Québec et le Parti québécois n'a jamais répondu à nos invitations. It's out there. That's a statement too by them. C'est aussi une position qu'ils ont prise. David est né au Port-au-Prince, adopté par les parents du Québec. Il a grandi à Drummondville, et il vit à Westmount Saint-Louis depuis 2012. L'environnement est son raison principale pour son candidature. Son formation était en project management au PMI Montréal, au PMI Institut de Montréal, et il a travaillé comme un facilitateur et gestionnaire des projets dans les métiers de mode, communication, communauté et la politique. David Touchette. Heidi, don't get nervous, but we lost you for a second. À la droite de David is Heidi Small, representing Bloc Montreal. She's a co-founder of the A Brilliant Night fundraiser to fight brain cancer and creator of the Beyond the Plate series spotlighting Montreal's top culinary talents. The mother of 3 and longtime Quebec resident, wants to help small businesses that were neglected by the provincial government during the pandemic. She says Montreal needs new leadership in the Assembly, fighting for everyone's rights, and quote, not the same old status quo. Heidi Small, Bloc Montreal. Next to her, Colin Standish, the founder of the Canadian Party, 9th generation townshipper. He was educated at Bishop's College School, Queen's University, Université Laval, and Osgoode Hall Law School. He is a jurist, passionate about language rights, and founder of the Task Force on Linguistic Policy. He served on the board of the Townshippers Association and the Voice of English-Speaking Quebec. That's not a pejorative comment by me, that's an actual organization, and is currently employed as a jurist at a Sherbrooke law firm. Colin Standish, Canadian Party of Quebec. Katya Rossokhata, now she and I will be talking Russian, no, I'm kidding, is the candidate for the Conservative Party of Quebec in Westmount St. Louis. She holds a bachelor's degree in biochemistry with honors from McGill University, where she also pursued master's level studies in human genetics. She's a native of Kiev, Ukraine. She says daring and innovation are needed in health, education, and the economy. Government is important, she says, for delineating a general framework that allows individuals to flourish, not to hold back citizens with layers of regulation that extinguish the flame. Katya Rossokhata, Conservative Party of Canada. And finally, next to her, Kuhn of the Green Party of Quebec. He's a social justice activist, community legal worker, father of 4, who has fought to support youth with disabilities and health issues. He also advocates for better public education, improved housing rights and environmental protection, while opposing religious and ethnic intolerance. His struggle to obtain essential services for his daughter, diagnosed with a form of autism, led to a public campaign to get access to speech therapy services. Kuhn, Green Party of Quebec. The candidates will now give a 2-minute opening statement, and we're starting with the incumbent, Jennifer Maccarone, and then we're going to move just right to left from her. So Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. You can hear me? Yes? So I'm Jennifer Maccarone. I'm the outgoing MNA of Westmount St. Louis. I'm the current Liberal candidate for the riding of Westmount St. Louis. Those of you who know me know that I've dedicated my life to the defense of people that find themselves in situations of vulnerability and those that are challenged, whether it's a disadvantage, linguistic, educational, or other. This role, my voice, your voice, it matters a great deal to me. I have not taken 1 minute of the past 4 years representing your interests in the National Assembly for granted. It has been an honor and it's been a privilege. But beyond that, for the past 15 years, at least, I've been occupying leadership roles, advocating for minority communities, whether it's for the Anglophone community. Many of you know me as the former president of the Quebec English School Boards Association, where I was fighting on the other side of the table at the National Assembly to make sure that our interests and our community was representative. Meryl mentioned it earlier, but I am mom to 2 amazing kids on the autism spectrum, and they are the reason that I got involved in politics, because I learned early on that if I wanted to make a change and be the voice for people that didn't necessarily have one, I had to get involved. And so I found my voice. That being said, I am very fortunate to represent the riding of Westmount St. Louis. Many of you may not be aware, but beyond Westmount, we have the entire downtown core of Montreal, we have the mountain, we have the wealthiest city in Canada, and 50% of all the homelessness in Quebec. And the reason why I bring that up is because I know that it's a shared concern that many of us have in this room. Depuis que je suis votre député, j'ai déposé plusieurs projets de loi d'intérêt privé. J'ai déposé un projet de loi moi-même qui a été adopté à l'Assemblée nationale de façon unanime. J'ai déposé des pétitions. J'ai fait plusieurs déclarations. J'ai déposé des mandats d'initiative. I've secured substantial funding for education, including the building of a new school in the downtown core of Montreal. I have voted against Bill 96, Bill 40, and Bill 21. The Liberals are the only party that supports a strong Quebec within a united Canada. Now more than ever, we need to work together to protect our democracy. Don't be fooled by one-issue parties who are seeking to divide our community. You know who we should be fighting against is the CAQ, and we should be doing that together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Maintenant, David Touchette, Quebec Solidaire.
It's more easy like that for me. Hi, good evening, Westmount St. Louis. So let's try to speak in English for you. So my name is David Touchette, and I bring my CV with me today. So if you want to have my CV at the end, because I'm here because I want to have a job. Obviously, I'm here because I want to present to you Quebec Solidaire. But I think I can be the next deputy. I will explain to you my experience. So all my own life, I was very interested to be implied in the politics and the social life. When I was in elementary school, I was implied at the Conseil des élèves. When I was in Montreal, I started my business in the fashion industry as a modeling agency, but I was always implied in the politics. I started with l'Institut du Nouveau Monde. I was with the Jeune Conseil de Montréal, the Young Montreal Council, when you do simulation parlementaire, just to be sure about the word. And I was also employed 5 years with the gay chamber community in Quebec. I'm in Quebec Solidaire for 10 years. In 2018, I was candidate at La Fontaine, and I was also for the last 4 years the official representative of Quebec Solidaire in Montreal. So I was in the board of the corporation the coordination for Montreal QS. I've also experienced in the organization communautaire because my last contract was the project management for the CDC de Rivière-des-Prairies. I was responsible for la table jeunesse et la table des aînés. Je suis très content d'être parmi vous. Mon objectif, c'est l'environnement, bien sûr, mais surtout, je crois sincèrement que Québec solidaire a tout ce qu'il faut pour attirer l'attention des citoyens et citoyennes de la ville de Westmount et des gens qui habitent le centre-ville de Montréal. J'espère que vous allez poser des questions. Gênez-vous pas pour poser toutes les questions que vous voulez. Je suis vraiment ici pour pouvoir vous dire comment Québec solidaire peut contribuer avec vous à Westmount. Merci encore.
Merci David. And now for the Bloc Montreal, Heidi Small.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Heidi Small. I'm 48. I've lived in Westmount over 23 years. I have 3 kids. I grew up in a very traditional home with 3 brothers, so I had to be an advocate really early on and demand for the same curfew, bedtime, etc. So that was the start of my career, and then later on I made up 3 other careers in the city of Montreal. One being I took care of the film industry when movies came to Montreal. I took them, this is before Airbnb and Google, there was Heidi, and I picked up every single person who came to Montreal to film a movie, and I took them all over the city, and I told them where to eat, where to sleep, where to have coffee, croissant, bagel. So I had the golden key to Montreal because I was bringing the likes of Julia Roberts, Jamie Foxx, all of these incredible A-listers and promoting Montreal and pumping small businesses with their presence. So it was a wild ride for 10 years. And then I started another career writing at the Montreal Gazette, highlighting our brilliant chefs, our small businesses. It is a labor of love. I love it. I still do it till today. And then I became an advocate when my late father was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and I was his voice and spoke with the doctors and took care of him, and then co-founded A Brilliant Night, which raises millions of dollars. We're going into our 8th year for research for brain cancer. So a campaign is 33 days, and I have been saying that for me living in Westmount, it's 365 days. I gave up my car a year ago. I walk the streets. I know every single store owner, every business, every restaurant, every chef. I live and breathe. I'm the heartbeat of this city, and I will continue on day 34 all the way through. I live for this city.
Thank you, Heidi. You may notice Nigel's putting up a sign when the candidates get close to the 30-second mark, but they're allotted 2 minutes. Colin Standish, leader of the Canadian Party of Quebec.
Thank you, Beryl. I'm Colin Standish, leader of the Canadian Party of Quebec and candidate for Westmount St. Louis. The Canadian Party offers a forward-looking, bold federalist vision of Quebec to encourage a renaissance that will make our province once again a major economic, cultural, and language rights hub of North America. We're building the team to build a better Quebec and to rebuild our society after 60 years of divisive linguistic identity and unity debates. We are on the precipice in this election. Our ability to remain Canadian, to exist in Quebec, is on the ballot in October. We will push the agenda to reverse policies that have crippled all Quebecers for decades and knock down artificial legislative barriers to identity and language in Quebec. We need to fight for respect. On door-to-door across Montreal, people are furious at the betrayal by all major political parties when it comes to Bill 96, where our rights as Canadians were traded away. We are the only party that is committed to full repeals of 96, 21, and 40 in their entirety and providing a new framework for language in Quebec. The Canadian Party will stand up till it go daily in the National Assembly. We will oppose bad bills on principle. We will force debates on motions and bills that are potentially detrimental to all Quebecers. We're proud to present ourselves as a principled party based on 6 core values that are bedrock to our movement: human rights, the Canadian Constitution, bilingualism, educational choice, prosperity, and reconciliation. Tonight I have a special message for my fellow English-speaking Quebecers, newcomers, Indigenous peoples. We can be leaders of Quebec. Quebec is our homeland too. There's a place for us here, and our claims are just as legitimate as those of any French-speaking Quebecer. We need not be beholden to reacting to new assaults on our existence, to see our family and friends move elsewhere, and an ever-diminishing socioeconomic presence We can be leaders of a movement to unite all Quebecers. This is our moment. The Canadian Party offers a new blueprint for post-Quiet Revolution Quebec. Join us in embracing a new political option, because if we do it right, our family and friends will rejoin us to build a better Quebec. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Katya Rossokhata, Conservative Party of Quebec.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Katya, and as you already heard, I'm Russian-Ukrainian in origin. So I had a whole speech prepared for tonight. However, President Putin made some announcements this morning, and my speech got completely changed. I stepped up in politics because over the last 2 years, I've seen Quebec engage in a very slippery slope where to question was considered something that is wrong, that you're for conspiracy theories and so on. So the first thing I would like to do today is to invite you to remember that the reason you have elections every 4 years is to have a choice every 4 years. When I was going door to door, I've seen a lot of people who, despite the criticism of the parties that were intended to vote to and their agreement with this criticism, were saying that, well, we voted for them our entire life, we're going to keep voting for them. This is not the point of having an election every 4 years. This is a unique right you have, and I invite you to remember it. I invite you to consider every party with its program, stepping away from the labels associated to the name, to the past past associations or anything, to look at the programs of every party. As a conservative, I'm here to stand up in the first place for the democracy, your liberty, and your rights. Thank you.
Katya, Sam Kuhn, Green Party of Quebec.
Okay, so my name's Sam Kuhn. I'm the Green Party of Quebec candidate for the riding of Westmount St. Louis. The Green Party of Quebec is an eco-socialist party. We are a federalist party, and I believe, I think the numbers bear it out, we have the most expansive policy there are as far as the environment is concerned to combat climate change. We're looking at carbon neutrality by 2035. I'm here today because I'm also a parent, not just an environmental activist. I'm here because I have 3 children with disability, 1 on the autism spectrum, and I was on this stage 4 years ago representing the Green Party because the Liberal Party of Quebec, their policy at the time for kids with autism was when you turn 4, you're 5 rather, you're kicked off the list. My child was waiting 2 years, and when my child turned 5, then the Liberal Party of Quebec kicked my child off the list, no speech therapy, no occupational therapy, and I was told by the social worker that he would never receive any therapy. That was the policy of the Liberal Party of Quebec, and that's why I'm here today, to advocate not just for social justice and environmental issue, but for kids with disabilities, because they cannot be left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Please state your name and area of the riding you live in, and who the question is for.
My name is Andrea Saunderson. I don't live in this riding, I live in St. Henry. The question is for, I guess, Liberal, but I think everybody, because I think it's non-partisan. I have volunteered with Bachelor Social Services and Bachelor Foundation, which provides money for kids once they age out of the system. And since the Laurent Commission, after the heinous death of the little 7-year-old in the Eastern Townships, Madame Laurent made some absolutely fantastic and sound recommendations, and I would like to know what has happened with them, because what we have seen in the pandemic is kids who come from homes that are not disadvantaged are seriously affected by things like a pandemic, and you take kids that are already in the foster care system and they are facing an uphill battle isn't even enough to describe it. They will die, they will end up on the streets, or they will, I don't know. we can all imagine what's going to happen to them or be emotionally traumatized. And what I would like everybody in the MNA, or in the National Assembly, to unanimously put through all of her recommendations yesterday for your first week in Parliament after the election.
That would be nice, but
So my
you
question
got to
is,
pose the question. What's the
what
question?
progress has been made and when is it going to be made?
Okay, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot because this is the question.
I'm happy to
I
start.
did.
I was going to give it to you.
Okay.
I just want to make a point. This is really a question that should have been posed to the candidate running for the Coalition Avenir de Québec, who chose not to be here. And there you go. So Jennifer Maccarone.
First of all, thank you for all the work that you do. We need more people like you out there making a difference, and it's thanks to you being here as well, growing awareness for a cause that, you're right, should be treated in a nonpartisan fashion. So thank you for your question. I think it's very important. What Beryl has said is absolutely right. It's a good question for the CAQ. It's a good question for the CAQ candidate. The CAQ has been in power for the past 4 years, and the Laurent Commission happened under their watch. There was a bill that was deposited subsequent to the deposit of the report, and the minister responsible for social services, Lionel Carman, was the person that headed that bill. So there was debate, and the debate was done in a nonpartisan fashion. There were improvements that were made to that bill, and that bill is now in effect. It's now up to the government, and it has been the responsibility of the CAQ since the adoption of that bill to not only finance, but to put in the reform, enact the reform, train proper personnel. We have a huge labor shortage. Again, that has been part of their responsibility to make those changes. We require a whole revamp of the DPG. And the DPG, in large part, as what you've been saying, we're not meeting the needs of very vulnerable clientele. So hopefully, when the next government is elected, it's something that they're going to take more seriously, because certainly the CAQ has not done so throughout their mandate. Although I agree with you, it should be something that's treated in a nonpartisan fashion, and I think that we should be able to have open discussion on what we can do collaboratively and together to do better by our kids. So thank you.
Jennifer, thank you for the work you've done. If any candidates want to answer a question that's not directly put to you, please raise your hand so I know where to go down the panel. Nobody's obligated to answer every question unless it's directly put to you.
Parfait, thank you for your question. To be honest, I cannot respond exactly about the DPG, but what Quebec Solidaire made, what is very important to know, is always to invest at the base. So I think first, what Quebec Solidaire want to do is the accessibility for psychology service. This is the most important for the kids, but for the parents also. This is not normal. We didn't have anything to help the parent at the base and to listen the kids. In the circumscription, I talked with someone who told me exactly what you say. After the pandemic, young people, they need help. Also in Quebec Solidaire, we think is also to invest in the education, to having almost the right teacher, to be with the student, to be sure the accompagnement was very correctly. But in Quebec Solidaire, we think also is to make an investment in the social community organization, because they need help to help the parents and everything. So I think it's not normal we have that much young going to the DPG. The society need to take care of the people at the base by the psychology service and to help also the economic, the community organization. Well, thank you.
Merci David. Et David, tu peux parler en français si tu veux, l'audience est complètement bilingue. Sorry, okay, Heidi had her hand up, so Heidi, then back to Jennifer. And then Sam.
Okay, I just wanted to add in relation to what David had shared, that I have 3 kids at home, and I see very much the impact on coming out of the pandemic. It's still, we don't even realize the effects. I believe the labor shortage at a certain level with certain ages is because kids today, they can't handle anymore what the stress levels are that come with a day on the job. I see it because my home is the hub to all of their friends, and I was thinking how I could help, and I know 3 different real estate companies in the city of Montreal. So I spoke with all of the developers and I said, with your empty storefronts and all the commercial spaces that are empty, how about we do a pop-up where we're having clinics for young children? And I spoke with Concordia and McGill with their social work program, so we would take the graduates and then we would use them with mentoring and have them occupy, with subsidies of course, all the empty storefronts in all of the buildings throughout Montreal with these 3 big real estate developers who all thought it was a beautiful idea. So I'm very with the concern for our young, because the pandemic effects, I don't feel we have even a scope of how it's affecting them, and they're our future. So I thought long and hard how to put the empty storefronts to good use.
Thank you, Heidi. Jennifer? Oh, okay. Well, Sam first, and then Katya. Oh, now Colin. Okay, Sam, Katya, Colin.
Thank you. I'm scared of this thing now. I think it works now. Yeah, a tragedy, and it feels to me that the system is broken. The system doesn't work. Healthcare. We've got no handle on the environment. You name it. You know, it's incredibly tragic. It seems like it doesn't matter what government's in power, whether the Liberals before or the CAQ now. It's absolutely paralyzed. In 2018, I visited Aglade's office, the leader of the Liberals, with 2 speech therapists and a mother of a child who died, who was on the spectrum, and with good faith. We wanted to try to get kids occupational and speech therapy and more support. And we were met with indifference. I had the worker in the office hang up the phone on me, pretending that he couldn't hear me, and so we find this all the time. And now we have the CAQ in power. I mean, 4 years ago, the CAQ candidate here said, Sam, we're going to get your daughter therapy. I guarantee it's going to happen. My daughter doesn't get therapy. There's no state therapy. If you're a child with autism who needs occupational speech therapy, it's not accessible. But at the same time, the politicians say nice words. They say that we have to, you know, like today there's an announcement by Aglade about autism, and what are they going to do? You know, what was their announcement? $500 a year for therapy? That's 4 sessions.
Sam, there are limits to the answers.
Yeah, okay, all right.
We want to stick to like
Okay,
making points, not necessarily.
Okay, so the Parti Québécois, or rather the Green Party of Quebec, we have specific goals and to help, not these symbolic gestures towards the most vulnerable.
By the way, the Liberal Party leader is Dominique Anglade, not Aglade, but that's... Anglade.
Anglade.
She's been a friend for a long time. Katya, please.
So I totally agree with what my colleague David said about the fact that we need to address mental health. And I think that's very important to remember that for the 2 years of the pandemic, all the parties at the National Assembly ignored that issue. The CAQ was governing by decrees, and the leader of the Conservative Party, Eric Duyan, was pretty much the only one to stand up and to mention the impact it's having on the youth at all levels. I would also like to remind that on September 10th, we made an announcement that if elected in the first 100 days of our mandate, we will hold a summit of mental health in the youth, among the youth, in order to hear first of all, in order to understand not how serious, but how big in reality this problem is, and collect all those different testimonies and opinions from professionals, as well as establish the measures that could allow us to respond quickly and efficiently, to tackle this issue right away, rather than keep taking projects that are slow to implement and so on. And I think the society being part of it, us as a whole, will also be very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Katya. Colin Standish.
Certainly the question asked reminds me of my youth in the eastern townships where child poverty was very prominent. I remember, my friends, were busting for over an hour away, often without breakfast, sometimes bruised, sometimes broken, to go to a little schoolhouse with 60 other kids, where it said, "Va chier les Anglais," written in cement graffiti on the side of my elementary school. I'll let you guys translate that for yourself. And, it reminds me of that, of these, how much gaps in education remain and how much social inequality exists for young people in Quebec. Our party has very concrete solutions for this, thankfully, 5 concrete solutions. Repeal of Bill 40, which has eliminated all English-speaking school boards in Quebec. They exist only now because of a court injunction for the English-speaking school boards. As well, achieving educational freedom in Quebec by adhering to international norms where people can choose the best language for themselves, English or French, for their children. As well, to have a province-wide symposium to address Quebec's chronically low youth and adult literacy rates and high school graduation rates, which are abysmally low. As well, importantly, we rescind the Quebec Liberal Party's 3 French course requirements in English CEGEPs, full reinstatement of Austin College expansion project.
Colin, I have to caution you that this candidates have to respond to a question. We're not going far afield on speechifying on general issues. So her question was specific to a particular kind of education. Time for...
Sorry, I'm just trying to highlight the education policy that we have. I have a final point, if I may, Farrell. But better resources as well and support for Quebec children with learning difficulties. But thank you.
Thank you, Colin. I've got a word to say about our next questioner since there's a stress here on healthcare, and rightly so. If we get it better in Montreal, it's going to be very much because of our next question. Yes, we call him Dr. Mark Roper. Not only has done an incredible job with Queens at the Medical Center, but has been the guiding spirit behind the driving force behind the court decision. Are we still waiting for the Cook decision?
No.
Okay. Dr. Mark Roper, who's been fighting for more GPs in Montreal forever.
Yeah, so I am a family doctor here in Westmount and an MDG. The question is on the manpower of family doctors and the plan of medical manpower for Quebec, which has been in place for the last 19 years and has been the policy of both the Liberal and the CAQ parties for the last 19 years. So our region is very big, as Jennifer mentioned. We have one of the lowest registration rates with a family doctor. It's now 61%. It used to be 62% last year. We have 100,000 people without a family doctor in our region. And for every 100,000 people without a family doctor, 60 people die extra every year. Charlevoix has 96% registration rate and has only 5,000 unregistered patients, and they're getting more doctors than we are in a net basis. So obviously this PREM system has resulted in very unequal access to family doctors, and I'm wondering if there are parties here who are willing to say that they're committed to changing this unfair restriction on recruitment of family doctors.
Well, let's start with Jennifer, the party that's there, that's the opposition. Let's start with her.
The party that's there.
That's in the opposition, it's official opposition. You're it.
Thank you, Dr.
Today. Tomorrow.
Thank you, Dr. Roper. It's an excellent question, and you're right, it's something that absolutely needs to be looked at. The PREM is something that's created a significant amount of inequity, and we've seen a lot of that specifically over the past 4 years, and with the impact of COVID, it's made it increasingly worse. So yes, we are committed to reviewing that. One of the other promises that the Liberal Party is making is that we'd like to depoliticize the healthcare system. And what we mean by that is to take the politics out, to look at our healthcare in a way that's beyond every 4 years, every new government coming into power, by turning it into something that's similar to Hydro-Quebec, like a Société d'État. So putting the responsibility back into the hands of the regions, back into the hands of the local decision makers, into people like you, because you're the ones that know best what we need on the ground locally. Beyond that, one of the other promises that we've made is, of course, we need to have more first-line workers. We need more of you. And in order to have more of you, we need to graduate more people from our healthcare institutions. So we need to have more doctors that are being graduated here in Quebec. We need to recognize diplomas from other countries. It's very important. We need to continue to support and validate and reward the people that are in those positions by looking at how the overtime is worked, because in the Anglophone healthcare system, it's slightly different than how it functions in the Francophone healthcare system. And in our riding, we don't just have the Kazum, we also have part of the Shim in the riding. So we've got an inequity as well across those lines. So those are some of the issues that we know that we're going to be looking at. But yes, you have a commitment from us to look at that, because you're right, this inequity needs to be corrected, and Charlevoix is represented by the CAC. And so I think it's clear why there has been more family doctors that have been awarded there than any of the other ridings. It's also one of the #1 priorities that I have been advocating for this election. I have 4 main ones, and that's one of the main ones that we have. It's one of the #1 requests we get at our riding office, people that don't have a family doctor.
Any question you'd like to comment on whether or not your party will commit to getting rid of the current Prem system and the horrible calculations that the math is wrong, as Marcus has written so often, and it's costing us services, doctors, and health. Anybody? Katya, you had your hand up first. David?
So I would just like to highlight that our party was the first one to actually propose a program that aimed at decentralizing the healthcare system. I mean, in this round of elections, the CAC has proposed it before. That's why a lot of people voted for them. They never did it. Our program has our plan has multiple approaches to it. So the first approach is to solve it locally by decentralizing the system, bringing back the control in the hands of the regions. And the second approach, as you mentioned, the shortage of staff. Graduating a new doctor takes quite a bit of time and training, as I think all of you know and understand the need for those years of training. However, there are a lot of qualified specialists that come into Canada and at best end up working like naturopath. So one of the aims of our party is to simplify the process of changing of accepting the diplomas, and instead of having to redo the whole medical education from scratch for those who come from a different system, to have a more short, specific training and recognition process. Thank you.
Before we go to, I think David had his hand up and Sam, I'm going to ask Mark to do something that he did with me, which is perhaps pinpoint the point of the question. Could you perhaps narrow the question down to what you asked, which is, will they commit to getting rid of the Prem, and explain in a small, short manner, like you did to me once, what's wrong with the math, why that system, why the calculation of that system. I'm not even sure some of the candidates know this, Jennifer does, but I'm not sure some of the newer candidates know how the calculation is wrong and hurting urban areas. Maybe you could just narrow the question so that we can get that answer.
Well, the government's calculations are based on ratio of family doctors to inhabitants. This region sees both the inhabitants and double that in people who move here to work or to study, so that's called portability. So our population we serve is actually double the number of inhabitants. If we just serviced our inhabitants, this region would have a registration rate close to 88%. So for every one patient we see of inhabitants, we see someone from another region. Montreal itself has 382,000 non-inhabitants registered with family doctors. We would have a registration rate of 86% if we kicked them all out and just saw our own population. Now the government neglects portability. I think they think portability is a measure of water quality. That's my thinking.
It's the R that's making me confused.
But as Jennifer says, there is politics involved because the regions that send us their patients every day, about 350,000 people come to Montreal just to work every day, and they usually see a doctor here. They're from regions that are politically quite important. So, and they like getting the doctors for their population, but they send us their citizens. So we are graduating more doctors. There's over 400. It used to be 200. Now we've doubled the doctors, but we are sending new doctors to regions that have a 95-92% registration rate, and we are actually getting less than replacement numbers in this area. So, so again, the question is, this PREM restriction, is there a party here that wants to remove the PREM restrictions on recruitment of family doctors?
David, well, David was next. David, vous comprenez la question. La question, c'est que Mme Maccarone a fait le point que, à cause de la politique de la CAQ, de servir les régions, la calculation pour les médecins dans les régions, c'est préférable pour les régions, mais pas pour les centres urbains. M. Roper demandait quel parti est prêt de faire un promis d'éliminer cette calculation et de faire une égalité et une liberté dans chaque région.
Merci beaucoup et je vais me permettre de répondre en français pour la question. Premièrement, à Québec solidaire, on dit dans notre slogan de cette année, nous on veut changer d'air. On pense qu'en effet, les gens doivent avoir accès à un médecin de famille. Mais on a l'impression que depuis des années, les vieux partis partagent toujours cette bataille entre le médecin de famille, désengorger les hôpitaux, les urgences. À Québec solidaire, je reviens, on veut partir de la base. Donc, on veut renforcer le service Info-Santé 811. On va investir pour que le service soit accessible pour faire une sorte de triage, pour qu'on ait un rendez-vous automatiquement. On veut faire en sorte, on va investir 540 millions pour s'assurer que ce service fonctionne comme il faut. Ça ne doit pas être juste une ligne d'information. Ensuite, on veut s'assurer que les CLSC soient ouverts 24 sur 24, 24/7. Là, on dirige les gens à l'urgence ou à un médecin de famille. On doit donner aux gens une accessibilité, un choix. Ce qu'on veut aussi à Québec solidaire, progressivement, j'en ai parlé tout à l'heure, c'est une accessibilité aux services de psychologie. On va investir 280 millions pour l'aide gratuite aux psychologues, pour les gens qui en ont besoin. Également, avec le vieillissement de la population, on parle de médecins de famille, bien sûr, mais il y a les proches aidants. Donc, Québec solidaire va investir 101,7
David, excuse-moi, mais comme j'ai dit à Colin et à Sam, ça n'a pas la place de faire les grands discours sur les sujets, c'est de répondre directement à la question. La question est simple, et c'est une question essentielle et existentielle pour la population. Est-ce que le Québec solidaire va terminer la politique de la CAQ de favoriser les régions dans cette question des médecins familiales ou non? Est-ce que le Québec solidaire est prêt à faire l'égalité de calculation pour les régions urbaines et dans les régions? That's the point. The point is the calculation is wrong and unfair. The CAC won't change it because that's where they get their votes.
Alors,
Is your party committed to making an equal calculation for the Montreal region as well as for the regions in the rural areas? That's the question. If the party doesn't have a position, that's okay. Vous pouvez dire que le parti n'a pas de position, but that's the question.
Mais je m'excuse, je ne pensais pas répondre à côté de la question. Je ne peux pas aller plus profond, je n'ai pas l'opinion exacte du parti sur ça. Mais I agree the fact it's supposed to be equal for the region and...
So you agree with the concept of equal calculation?
Non, on est d'accord qu'il va y avoir un équilibre, mais je ne peux pas répondre exactement ce que le parti pense sur cette question différente. Ce que je vais dire, c'est que à la base, avant de se préoccuper de voir sur les médecins de famille, il faut que la population ait un plus grand choix pour avoir un service de santé entre les médecins de famille et l'urgence, c'est pas assez.
So, Sam, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Absolutely.
You got the question, right?
Yeah, absolutely. My party would get rid of that calculation, and if they didn't, because our party policy doesn't mention this, okay? But I would quit the party if they didn't.
Perfect answer. Colin?
So yes, the Canadian Party would eliminate the plans régionaux d'effectifs médicaux, the PREMs, the permit allocating doctors within the CIUSS regime. We'd establish new criteria for distribution of family doctors in a fair and transparent manner for all of Quebec's designated regions, including Montreal and the greater Montreal area. Necessarily, this would include a fair distribution of bilingual doctors to regions with significant English-speaking populations, Montreal, Outaouais, Gaspé, Eastern Townships. We'd also recommend that an independent body be tasked to administer and allocate medical doctors to Quebec regions based on actual need. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. You answered this already. You want a supplementary? Go. Quick, short, en bref.
It will be very quick and short, just since the precision came after my answer. So our party basically gets rid of that calculation because it's a central planning calculation, and our proposition is to decentralize the system, allow competition by inviting the private healthcare into the services offered, but still being the ones who pay for it. So by this, in the end, the calculation is not relevant anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam, real short.
Very short. I was waiting for my Conservative Party partner here. Privatization, no, absolutely not. We must fight that.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for all your work. Please identify your name, please, and where do you live?
Mon nom, c'est Lucien Savard, je demeure dans Westmount depuis 22 ans. En fait, l'absence du...
Bonjour, I didn't recognize you for a second.
On grisonne avec le temps.
Absolument. Go. Toi.
Je pense que l'absence de la CAQ est une insulte à l'intelligence des électeurs.
Si la CAQ fait pour vous, je pense que la majorité de vous comprend que pour chaque vote, chaque parti politique gagne d'argent de l'élection Québec. So, I guess CAQ has enough money, I guess the Parti québécois has enough money.
Bon, ma question suit mon observation. Vous êtes tous d'accord qu'au Québec, depuis des années, les problèmes sont multiples dans les grands ministères. J'entends le ministère de la Santé, le ministère de l'Éducation, le ministère du Transport, et dans les autres ministères aussi. Donc, il y a un problème. Et souvent, le problème est de l'ordre financier et d'organisation. Ce que j'entends des différents partis actuellement en campagne électorale, c'est qu'on veut, à part du fait que je suis tout à fait contre qu'on néglige de verser au Fonds des générations, pourtant je ne suis pas celui qui va bénéficier des fonds des générations, mais c'est pas ça ma question. Ma question, c'est qu'alors qu'on a des problèmes avec nos routes, avec nos écoles, avec nos hôpitaux, les partis politiques nous proposent des bonbons. Et puis, les bonbons, une journée en spin, un parti dit « on va vous donner ça ». L'autre journée en scrum ou en spin, l'autre parti nous dit « on va vous en donner un petit peu plus ».
On peut préciser les commentaires et les questions maintenant, Touchette.
Ma question, c'est vous qui prétendez avoir la mission de défendre les citoyens de Westmount-Saint-Louis, que pensez-vous du fait que, alors qu'on a des problèmes de structure dans les grands ministères, qui nécessitent des investissements pour ceux, que pensez-vous du fait qu'on nous propose des argents, des bonbons, des crédits, des chèques, alors que les problèmes ne sont pas réglés? Les chèques, c'est des diachylons qu'on nous donne temporairement. Ça ne règle pas des problèmes. Fait que j'aimerais savoir vos opinions sur cette maladie de dire aux citoyens, un peu comme dans le temps de voler du plaisir, je vais te paver un petit bout de chemin devant ta maison. Là, la maladie, c'est de dire, on va te faire un chèque, on va te donner des crédits. On va acheter ton vote, autrement dit. On est en 2022. Les électeurs du Québec sont bien intelligents dans le temps du plaisir, sont capables de comprendre. Ça, je dis que l'absence de la CAQ ce soir, à mon avis, c'est vraiment une atteinte à l'intelligence des citoyens. Parce que la CAQ avait des choses à défendre ce soir. Merci.
Lucien. Avec votre permission, je vais préciser some question un peu. His question was how do any of you want to deal with the question that in Quebec, as Lucien said, since the days of Duplessis, any problem has always been usually dealt with a handout, with a check, and massive bureaucracies, massive ministries, rather than anybody on the ground get to decide for everybody. So as an example, and then I'll open it up to you, in Dr. Roper, we were just discussing healthcare. So we have 39 cents of every tax dollar in Quebec goes to healthcare. And 52% of the people getting a check from the Ministère de Soins Santé have nothing to do with the delivery of healthcare. They're fonctionnaires who send a little gray card protocols to doctors, telling doctors to fill out how much medicine they gave, and to whom, and by age. How do you stop that? Ça c'était besoin de votre question, Lucien? Parfait. Who wants that? Gotcha, go.
Merci pour votre question. Et en effet, c'est un des problèmes que le Parti conservateur du Québec a mentionné dès le début. C'est que le souci, c'est pas nécessairement la quantité d'argent qu'on met sur les ministères, c'est l'organisation au sein des ministères. Et en tant que conservateurs, nous croyons à l'intelligence des citoyens, comme vous dites, pour pouvoir faire ces décisions eux-mêmes. Et c'est pour ça qu'on veut réduire la taille de l'État, pour introduire de la concurrence, pour que le choix que les gens font soit les choix qui forcent les organismes à se restructurer d'une manière efficace. C'est aussi pourquoi notre programme de réduction de taxes, il n'affecte pas les versements au fonds des générations. La manière dont on le finance, c'est en réduisant les dépenses, en rendant l'argent utilisé plus efficacement. Merci.
Merci Lucien. Oui, c'est une excellente question. Je pense que c'est très important pour tous les Québécois et Québécoises. For me, pardon me, to speak in English, plus à l'aise en anglais, mais je vais essayer de parler français devant cette réponse. But I feel, to knock down the systemic, barriers based on identity and language would be a first place to start, eliminating 96 and 21 and 40. Stop dividing Quebecers on ethnic and linguistic grounds. I think that's a starting point. We can rebuild our economy. We can have unity and purpose for our society. As well, knock down those artificial barriers, those regulations that have crippled our economy for decades, that are, based on having more fonctionnaires in Quebec City than people, driving delivery trucks here in downtown Montreal. We need to knock down these artificial barriers we put up by all the major parties for the past 60 years, where we used to be one of the richest jurisdictions in North America, indeed the world, the leader. And Montreal certainly itself is a leader in science, technology, innovation, culture, education. It is still leading in many of these, but no longer the leading light of Canada in the world. And we need to reclaim that mantle. We can do so in a constructive way by eliminating state-driven discrimination epitomized by 2196 and what the CAP has done for the last 4 years. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take part of my role as a moderator and préciser la question de Lucien encore, because it's very important and it comes from discussions we've had. That what he's asking is the following: every party makes promises for money. Every party makes promises for cutting taxes. What no party does is say, you know what, we're in an emergency here. We've got the highest tax rate in the Western world. What are you going to cut? Why has no party stood up and said, you know what, until we get out of the emergency, until we fix the hospitals, until we fix the schools, until we fix the roads, multiculturalism, diversity, all the groups we're buying out, they're going to wait. Those ministries are going to be reduced, and those checks are going to wait. Who's ready to commit to that? Anybody want this?
That's exactly our platform.
In other words, nobody ever talks about cutting programs.
Excusez-moi.
Allez.
C'est moi la candidate.
Allez.
OK. Je suis en désaccord avec la façon que vous venez de présenter la question. Moi, ce que j'ai compris...
Ça, c'est la but de question. Colin a répondu avec un grand programme. Je voudrais la question être plus serrée.
Moi, ce que j'ai compris de la question qui a été posée à tous les candidats qui sont ici, c'est que pourquoi c'est toujours des promesses basées sur qu'est-ce qu'on va vous donner en mesure de la chèque, au lieu d'avoir quelque chose peut-être au-delà de ça, parce qu'on est rendu 2022, fait que pourquoi qu'on ne peut pas parler peut-être d'être plus non partisans? Peut-être on ne peut pas avoir des lois qui seront adoptées, qui vont être pérennes, qui vont vivre plus longtemps, alors pour éviter des promesses. Puis je ne veux pas vous induire en erreur. La raison que les partis politiques font des plateformes électorales, c'est pour vous faire rêver. Parce qu'au-delà de l'argent et les promesses que nous faisions, c'est basé sur des valeurs. Alors, il faut que vous choisissez les valeurs qui répondent mieux à vous, comment vous êtes comme électeur et les choses qui sont les plus importantes pour vous. Alors, au-delà de, mettons, une vision libérale, au-delà d'une vision d'inclusion, de diversité, d'une économie forte pour en donner à les personnes en situation de vulnérabilité, il faut que les gens ils se voient à l'intérieur d'une plateforme électorale. Mais je suis d'accord avec vous en ce qui concerne la vision qui est plus large. J'ai fait un débat hier, puis David était là avec moi et M. Kuhn aussi. On a parlé beaucoup d'environnement. Alors j'espère qu'on va rêver aussi en ce qui concerne l'environnement, parce que ce que j'ai proposé, c'est peut-être qu'on nous sommes rendus à un point où il faut dépolitiser aussi des discussions en ce qui concerne l'environnement. Au lieu que ce soit quelque chose qui est adopté à chaque 4 ans, je pense que nous sommes rendus à un point où nous pouvons avoir un débat en ce qui concerne 2-3 points forts, que tous les partis politiques s'alignent, puis qu'on dit oui, on est d'accord, puis ça va être quelque chose de pérenne pendant 20-25 ans, et on va adopter une loi qui ne pourrait pas être rédactée, changée, parce qu'il faut qu'on rentre tout dans la même façon et dans la même direction. Ça, c'est possible, mais ça va prendre des gens comme vous, parce qu'actuellement, la CAQ est au pouvoir avec 37% de vote populaire de la population. Fait que les gens, tout le monde aime 500 $ ici, 500 $ là. Alors, ça va prendre une plus large discussion pour être en mesure de combattre ce type de vote. Mais je suis avec vous, je pense qu'il faut aller au-delà de ça pour moduler, mais ça reste que la population aime ça, ce type de promesse. Mais je vous encourage de voter avec vos valeurs, hein, parce que ce serait la meilleure façon de changer le Québec et avoir un Québec à votre vision.
Next question. Name and party right here.
Mon nom est Jacinthe Deschamps, je suis assez Henri, je suis propriétaire de garderie à Westmount aussi. Présentement au Québec, il y a 51 000 enfants sur les listes d'attente pour les garderies, c'est 8 000 de plus depuis l'arrivée de François Legault. Quel est votre plan concret dans votre plateforme pour aider les familles de Westmount à accéder aux garderies ici?
La question, c'est pour qui?
Pour tous les partis.
Pour tous les partis. OK. Nous pouvons commencer parce que, de respect que vous êtes les députés. Mais Sam, we'll do it from left to right.
I'm sorry, I don't speak French, so I didn't understand that.
Okay.
So the question...
her question was, what's your plan for? What? I know. What's your plan for getting more daycare? Because there's 52,000 kids.
No, my question is not to ask for more daycare. Yeah, so basically there's 55,000 kids right now on a waiting list for daycare in Quebec. That's 8,000 more since François Legault's been in power. What's the plan to help the family access the daycares already there? Because there's spaces, there's just no plan to access them.
You may find there's not that many spaces, but we'll take your, I'll take
I
your
own the
assumption.
daycare, I can
Sam,
tell you.
go ahead.
On Green Party Quebec, we want to eliminate subsidies for daycare as far as private subsidies. We want to expand massively the public provided daycare. We want every parent to have a right to free daycare, and it's a priority for us.
Gotcha.
So, dans le Parti conservateur du Québec, nous, notre approche, c'est, en tant que des conservateurs, c'est évidemment de promouvoir la concurrence et réduire ce contrôle de la part de l'État, que ce soit des subventions ou autre chose. Nous proposons de manière concrète de 200 $ par semaine, par famille, aux parents de Québec pour qu'ils puissent choisir le mode de garderie dans lequel ils veulent mettre leurs enfants. L'idée, c'est que cela va promouvoir le développement de garderies par des processus réguliers du marché, donc surtout pour les garderies en milieu familial et les garderies privées, si les parents sont prêts à y aller, ils peuvent, pour que ce soit moins une barrière et pour que la décision soit dans les mains des parents et non du gouvernement.
Thank you, Katya. Colin, let's keep the answers as tight as possible.
Canadian Party certainly endorses universal public access and universal daycare. We believe it shouldn't be based on subsidies, as just described by the Conservative Party. It should be accessible to individuals based on the $8 a day daycare that we currently have, to expand it, to give the funding necessary for people to start up their own daycares, for there to be publicly funded ones, for private entrepreneurs to have them, but it should be paid, once again, by the state with the subsidies at this point in time, but to make sure that all parents, all children have access to that full equal manner. Thank you.
Easier access to daycare was the question.
Well, being a mom of 3 and I've been through the daycare system, I can sympathize because I know those long waits and waiting to find out if your kid has a space. And Bloc Montreal is all for advocating for, similar to what Colin said, if you were wanting to have a private daycare, be it in your home or in a different location, that you would have the means and the subsidies and the required amounts to do so. As well, universally, everybody has access to $8 a day, and if they can't afford it, then subsidies will be made. But no child should go without.
Thanks, David.
Merci, je vous réponds en français. Juste mention, tout à l'heure, je voulais prendre le tour de parole pour répondre à monsieur après madame Maccarone. Donc, si prochainement il veut la réponse, ça va me faire plaisir. Pour Québec Solidaire, j'en fais pas un détail, mais on va créer un nouveau modèle de CPE pour les 8 à 20 classes en région particulièrement, mais également dans la région de Montréal. Et on va avoir une prestation, ça s'appelle la prestation coupon, qui va être octroyée de 870 $ par mois aux parents d'enfants de moins de 18 mois qui vont avoir épuisé leur prestation du RQAP, du régime québécois d'assurance parentale, et qui ne peuvent pas retourner au travail, donc en attente d'une place. On pense aussi à ces gens-là à ce niveau-là. Dans notre plan également, où je pourrais vous revenir en détail, on prévoit qu'on va réduire bien sûr la facture des parents et des étudiants, mais aussi on pense augmenter le nombre de CPE pour un budget de 610 millions de $. Je vous remercie.
Merci, David. Jennifer?
Est-ce que vous souhaitez que je réponde en français ou en anglais?
Comme vous voulez, ça ne me dérange pas.
OK, fait que je vais le faire bilingue.
C'est bon.
Le dossier de la famille au gouvernement, c'est le 3e plus gros budget du gouvernement. C'est gros. Et vous avez tout à fait raison, 55 000 enfants qui sont sur la liste d'attente, ça veut dire qu'il y a 37 000 places à développer. Il faut premièrement revoir toutes les cartes de distribution parce qu'actuellement, la façon que la carte sont en train d'octroyer les places, ce n'est pas simple. J'ai posé ces questions en crédit budgétaire auprès du ministre de la Famille, Mathieu Lacombe, parce que franchement, nous avons besoin de développer des places ici et lui a dit non. On a besoin de 1700 places ici dans la région de Montréal et la CAQ, selon eux, on a besoin de 30. Alors, il faut revoir les cartes. Comment nous allons faire ça? C'est le gouvernement fédéral, nous avons versé 6 milliards de dollars. C'est un transfert fédéral. And what the government did with the $6 billion is they put it into the general fund instead of investing this money into daycare, which is what it was meant to do. So our commitment is to use the entirety of those funds to continue the development of the places across the network for daycare spots, which means we're going to have to convert. We're going to have to convert daycares that are private that wish to be subsidized. Why? Because every child should have universal access to daycare at $8.70. What happens, right? It should be the right, like you have to go to school. Nobody would tell you you can't go to school, there's no place. It should be exactly the same right. But we also believe that there should be 85% of the spaces that can be subsidized, and then there should be a 15% that should be open for people that want to have private daycares and a variety of different offerings. Why? Because currently in our CPE network, kids, for example, that have special needs, they have a hard time getting access to subsidized daycare spots because they own all the power and those kids are often expelled. I've deposited many mandate initiatives regarding this. And so we need a lot of private daycares that can offer modulated services. Regretfully, you don't have any subsidies for that. And so that's also something that needs to change so that we can get equal access. So use the $6 billion, $8.70 universal access for everybody, make it a true universal access by putting it into the law, convert all the daycares that wish to be converted. And by the way, that can happen like this, because all your private daycares are subjected to exactly the same rules and regulations, the CPEs, as your private daycares. and you can convert it literally within a month. And so there's no reason why kids should be waiting anywhere. This is a very, very, very poor decision on the part of the CAC to not do that. We also suggested we want to prioritize student support as youth, children that have special needs, or children that are living in areas that are less favorisés. Why? Because these kids absolutely need to get in early. Agir tôt, c'est un vrai affaire. Si on peut accompagner nos jeunes de très jeune âge, nous avons beaucoup d'espoir de changer les choses pour eux plus tard. Alors voilà.
Thank you, Jennifer. Middle, please, identify yourself and how you are.
Hi, candidates. My name is Ryan Touchette. I live in this riding. My question is about electoral reform. Montreal only has 27 out of 125 seats in the National Assembly under this first past the bill system, which is essentially winner take all. You don't need 50%. So my question is to you: will any of you pledge to reform our electoral system? If so, how and in what system? Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, let's go to the middle of the table and start with Colin, and then I'll flip around.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's critically important that we do reform our democratic system. The first past the post and majoritarian system, they no longer work. They're no longer justified in this millennium, this day and age. We, the Canadian Party, we believe, there is a strong argument for having a strong local representative that is attached to your riding, but have a mixed member plurality system, so to have a certain percentage of the National Assembly represented by a percentage vote by all parties, so that would allow smaller parties, new parties, to have representation in the National Assembly. This is critically important. We propose a 70% on elected as they currently are in their local ridings with an attachment there, and then based on party lists that is will be nominated from local geographies based on a regional level. So that would be 30% based on the percentage of the vote would be attached to a particular region. So I think it really is important to have that intimate attachment to your actual riding, not just parties that would pick people internally, but make sure that there is an attachment to local democratic institutions. And as well, another way in which we would...
Colin, we got a time limit. These can't be speeches. Gotcha.
So the answer is yes. I think our party is a good illustration of the issues with the first past the post system. On the current polls, we're coming in second with 20% of intentions to vote nationally, and yet with 0 projected seats. And we're basically going to advocate for the plurality system, because it doesn't make sense that when the public wants a fifth of the public wants us to be represented, that's the Quebec Solidaire and Parti Québécois put together, that we're not getting any seats potentially. This is just a system that's clearly not efficient anymore and does not support democracy.
Thank you, Katya. David?
Okay, I don't have a lot to answer to this. For sure, we want to change, and we're asking year by year to every government in Quebec. But just to clarify the argument you say about the fact that Quebec Solidaire and the PQ should join together is not on the intention, so we should not talk about something you don't know for now. But for sure, we want to change the electoral system. Thank you.
Sam?
I'm going to read the policy.
Sure.
The Green Party of Quebec supports reform of the voting system to make the National Assembly more representative of the popular vote. To this end, we propose a mixed regional compensatory voting system. Under this new voting system, voters would be invited to vote in 2 stages. First, for an M&A in their riding.
I said no speeches, Sam. Short.
I'm just reading.
Yeah, well, could go on for 2 pages. We don't have time for that.
Okay, it's going to be we are going to reform it, and we're going to reserve seats for Aboriginal people in Quebec, so they have guaranteed representation.
Thank you, Sam. Heidi?
The system is broken. It's such a disheartening time for all of us. Our democracy is in peril. And Bloc Montreal will do everything to have proper representation of everybody, specifically minorities and Indigenous. And it makes no sense that all these decisions are made at the National Assembly, but Montreal has no real true representation. So Bloc Montreal is all about representing the needs, the voices of the island of Montreal.
Jennifer?
So I'm not sure if you're aware, but in the last parliamentary session, there was a lot of debate on electoral reform, and all parties except for the CAQ voted in favor of moving forward with potential legislation. The CAQ knocked it down because it meant that they would have lost a significant amount of their seats. And so I agree with you. What we have been talking about is proportional representation, and there's a lot of debate and discussion that needs to happen about that. I think that that's a ballot question that likely needs to happen at the next election, and I think that that's something that we need to consult the population on as well before we say yes, we want to do it or no, because there's a variety of different electoral reform positions, and I don't want to pronounce myself on one without hearing from everybody else first and deciding what you want before we make a decision on your behalf.
Brian, a quick question for you. Would you still want the dual system you're proposing if they equalize the ridings in Quebec? If we wouldn't have Ile-de-Laurent with 13,000 people and Western St. Louis with 60,000, if they equalize the population, do you think would you still want a dual system?
The voting system I'm in favor for personally would be mixed member proportional, and it would be in where some would be elected for the first past the post and others proportionally, but that would be specifically more of an open party-less system.
Okay. Yes, sir. Name and the area of the riding.
Je m'appelle Théodore et j'habite le centre-ville de Montréal. Et je voudrais poser une question sur les personnes en situation d'itinérance dans le comté. On a plusieurs organismes dans notre comté qui travaillent fort pour eux, mais on en a quand même beaucoup de nos concitoyens qui sont encore dans la rue. Donc je voulais savoir c'est quoi les idées des partis à ce sujet-là, surtout les partis qui n'ont pas de grande plateforme ouverte qu'on peut accéder. C'est quoi leurs idées sur ce sujet-là? Mais ma question se pose comme tout le monde.
Okay, à tout le monde. Let's start with David.
Je vais donner la chance à quelqu'un de répondre avant moi, s'il vous plaît.
Avec quoi?
I let someone to answer before. No, I can't?
Oh, yeah, listen. If I gave Jennifer that okay, I'll give it to you. Katya.
Unfortunately, I don't think our party has a standing position. I mean, obviously it's an issue I personally would want to bring to the National Assembly, but this election, over the past 2 years, it shows that we have so many macro issues that we can't tackle every single issue at once. Et donc, on veut se concentrer sur les gros problèmes de la province en premier pour pouvoir aider tout le monde et mais tout en s'occupant des issues plus locales.
Merci, Katya. Sam.
If you can translate that, I didn't get that.
I was asking about the homeless situation, how we have many different organizations in the riding that deal with it, but yet we have more and more people on the streets.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I mean, stone's throw from my home in St. Henry, there's 10 tents, all right? So this is out of control in this city. The Green Party of Quebec wants to implement a minimum wage for people. We want to provide housing, and we're going to do this by expropriating homes. So, rental housing. So, if a landlord has more than 10 units, then the state will expropriate those homes and rent them out to tenants. And we also, at the same time, will build 50,000 affordable housing for homeless, and that should be a massive part of the solution to combat homelessness.
Thank you, Sam. Colin? Short.
Yeah, it's a complex issue, and I think it would be a complex answer to it, and our answer at the Canadian Party would be to make sure that the social safety net, that affordable housing, that education, that addiction services and job training are combined in a relevant, rational way for people who need it, who use it, and they need access to it in a rational way throughout the province.
Thank you. Heidi?
It's rampant around the city. You can't walk down the street without seeing somebody in need. Even in Westmount, where it's like this wealthy pocket, there's all over the streets people in need. And so I have done a study which involves finding out how many unused abandoned churches there are in and around the island of Montreal. And Bloc Montreal is putting together a plan whereby we do a specific pilot project, opening up abandoned, empty churches and allowing it for subsidy housing for the homeless, and to as well use the graduates from the healthcare system and bring them in for another pilot project, so that all of those graduate students from McGill and Concordia and everywhere, all the universities, we have all those brilliant minds and they all need places to go. So imagine you take those brilliant minds and you bundle them up and have those services provided for the homeless at these empty churches, I think is definitely a good start.
Thank you, Heidi. David, maintenant.
Merci pour votre question. Je vais trouver ma feuille. Pour Québec Solidaire, bien sûr, c'est toujours la base de travailler avec les organismes communautaires. Puis moi, cette réponse, quand je parle d'organismes communautaires, c'est qu'il faut faire un investissement. J'habite aussi au centre-ville de Montréal et on le voit, la situation de l'itinérance. Et j'ai été rencontrer un organisme autochtone et j'ai parlé avec des personnes itinérantes autochtones qui sont justement entre autres sur Milton et Park. Et ce qu'ils m'expliquaient, c'est qu'il faut voir la base, qu'est-ce qu'ils ont besoin. Exemple, on m'expliquait que lorsque eux vont avoir un besoin de se loger, c'est souvent du temporaire pour une nuit. Mais des fois, ce qu'ils souhaitent, c'est d'avoir un endroit pour laisser un bagage, un sac, pour ranger un peu de nourriture, tranquillement, pas vite. Il faut voir, travailler avec les organismes communautaires qui manquent de financement, qui peuvent bien faire en sorte que quand ils vont accompagner les personnes en recherche d'appartements, ils vont avoir le temps et qu'ils vont trouver le moyen de faire en sorte que les personnes vont trouver également des logements abordables. Je prends un autre exemple, j'ai parlé avec le Centre des femmes afghanes. Elles sont financées à la mission, au projet souvent, et puis leur mission, c'est une mission d'accueil. Alors, lorsqu'ils vont accueillir les gens, ils vont avoir besoin de prendre du temps pour les loger. Mais ce temps-là, elles ne sont pas nécessairement financées pour le faire. Avec le manque de logements sociaux et abordables, ça crée une pénurie pour des nouveaux immigrants. Maintenant, il faut, avec Québec Solidaire, ce qu'on veut, c'est déjà construire 50 000 nouveaux logements sociaux, 25 dans un premier mandat. Pourquoi est-ce que je parle de logements sociaux? Parce qu'on
David, Kuhn, le temps là.
Mais je m'excuse, monsieur, on voit personne qui nous indique le temps. Alors, ça serait apprécié.
C'est moi. Pour les réponses avec quelque chose, c'est moi.
Mais pour savoir s'il me reste 30 secondes, 15 secondes, je pourrais calculer mon rythme de voix.
Et il est des commentaires.
Alors, je vais. Donc, tout ce que je dis, c'est qu'il faut avoir des logements abordables, parce que lorsqu'on vient en recherche d'appartements, il faut créer une offre plus large pour ne pas risquer que personne tombe en situation d'itinérance. Donc, l'itinérance concerne tous les gens de la société. C'est pour ça qu'il faut avoir plus de logements sociaux. Je vous remercie.
C'est David, Jennifer.
C'est une excellente question et oui, c'est un problème de société. J'ai mentionné dans mes remarques préliminaires que dans ce comté, nous avons Westmount, mais nous avons aussi tout le centre-ville de Montréal. Et comme David a dit, ça représente 50% de toute l'itinérance à la province du Québec. C'est dans notre comté. Nous avons le Carré-Cabot, mais nous avons aussi Milton Park. Et ces deux endroits de notre comté qui sont en train de souffrir massivement parce que les personnes qui se retrouvent en situation d'itinérance n'ont pas assez de ressources. Alors, les promesses du Parti libéral du Québec, c'est non seulement d'investir massivement dans les organismes communautaires à la mission, parce que ça fait partie des bémols et des difficultés dont ils font face depuis des années, mais c'est aussi de regarder des programmes comme ils sont actuellement en place, puis c'est des programmes qui ont été mis en place par les citoyens à Milton Park, par exemple, le centre urbain communautaire. Eux, ils ont organisé un plan pour réutiliser l'ancien site d'Hôtel-Dieu. Et pour faire ceci, mais ça veut dire qu'il faut réutiliser tous les pavillons qui sont maintenant vacants. Présentement, il y a 183 lits qui sont gérés par Oldbury Mission. Little known fact, we have 12 shelters in our riding. Oldbury Mission with 183 beds that they're currently taking care of inside one of the pavilions at Hotel-Dieu. The reality is that they've built it, people have come, and they have to close their doors to all of the other people that are coming. So what we need to do is ensure that we've got other resources to take on those additional people. So we need to better finance organizations like Oldbury Mission. Puis quand on parle de aussi financer les organismes communautaires, il ne faut pas oublier que la majorité des gens qui travaillent au sein de nos organismes communautaires, c'est nos aînés. Alors, il faut s'assurer qu'ils sont favorisés pour le retour au marché du travail. Ça, c'est très important parce que nos aînés ne sont pas malades. Nos aînés ont quelque chose à contribuer à ceci. Resilience is also another project that we worked very hard on over the past 4 years. We've been successful at finding them funding. Now what we need to do is help them get a project manager so that they can continue their mission, move past where they are in Cabot Square to the location that they've already pre-identified.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sitting in the middle. Your name, please, and where you are.
Hi, my name is Frank Candido. I live in Westmount, and I'm bilingual. I don't know how you can do what you're doing when you don't understand anything. It's a little weird. But anyway, just saying.
Well, can I do that?
Frank, I don't think that was the question.
No, okay, but anyway, so I'm a bit embarrassed to have to bring this
Move
up
on.
because, as one of the gentlemen said earlier, there's huge issues within our society that are so much more important. But since the CAC government decided to make this issue an issue of importance, then therefore I feel like I should bring it up. So, first of all, Jennifer, you know that I came to see you before your mandate, at the beginning of your mandate. I was a fan, wanted to support you. I've written you many times, and I'm very disappointed. So I want to point out one thing. You mentioned something about English hospitals.
No speech applied.
It's coming, the question's coming. You mentioned something about English hospitals and French hospitals. Well, I just want to correct you. There are bilingual hospitals and there are French hospitals. As far as I know, I can't remember seeing an English hospital anymore in Montreal. So that's number one. Number two, did you vote when the motion for Bonjour High was tabled? Did you vote for or against that? Just curious. It's just a yes or no.
Frank.
No, but just asking.
Is that you can't have a questions within a discussion. What's your question?
Okay, well,
you get one question, you get one supplementary. I laid out the rules.
Okay, so it's just that the Liberal Party is running ads saying that they're the only party that voted against Bill 96.
But again, Frank, you got to pose
So
a
the question is, okay, so there's two
questions.
questions. Did you support the motion for Bonjour High in the National Assembly, yes or no? And did you not support
Frank,
Bill 96? These are my two questions.
Yes, but I have to tell you something. So you're asking a question directed at one candidate. That's your question.
No, because I know that, you know.
Frank, you got one supplementary. I just want you to know that you're using up your questions, right? So your first question is for her, to Jennifer, and then you got a supplementary.
Okay,
whoever,
so
right?
my first question is simple. Did you support the motion for Bonjour High in the National Assembly? Yes or no? That's my first question.
So the motion is more complicated than just Bonjour High, but I understand that that's your vision. So ultimately,
My
yes,
vision?
we voted in favor of the motion. Motions are
Thank
not
you.
laws.
My second question.
No, I have an opportunity to respond.
He has a right to answer.
Thank you very much. Motions are not laws, and the Liberal Party is the only party that's looking to bridge the divide between Anglophones and Francophones. We are not a sea of Anglophones sitting all by ourselves, and we can't do it without the majority group. We need to work together. Quite frankly, I'd like to go past these issues that are always Anglophone and Francophone and start talking about Quebecers, because that's who we all are. I was raised in a household where my father was Francophone and my mother was Anglophone. I'm perfectly bilingual, and I never felt I was more one than the other. I understand your distress about the motions, and you're right, we did talk about it. But if we want to actually form a government, if we want to actually bridge that gap, then we have to find a way to have a meeting of the minds. Motions are not laws. And that motion was far more complex than just Bonjour High. It was, what are we doing to make sure that we're increasing people's knowledge of French? What are we doing to make sure that people understand that when they come to Quebec, that yes, people here do speak French. And so we were encouraging people to answer in French, to speak in French, not prohibit anybody. I was not elected to be telling people what they should be doing when people walk into their shops. There was no law, no bill that was enacted about that. But I understand your distress, and I understand why people feel that it's an illusion of something else that's happening. A motion is not a law.
Frank, you get a second question. You get a supplementary.
So when Bill 96 was tabled, unless I'm wrong, Did the Liberal Party support Bill 96? Because you're running ads saying that you're the only party that didn't support Bill 96. So my understanding is you did support Bill 96.
So the ad is very specific. We're the only party that voted against Bill 96, Bill 40, and Bill 21. And the reason why we can say that is because Quebec Solidaire voted in favor of Bill 96. We're the only ones that voted against Bill 96.
Thank you, Frank. Next question over there. Front microphone, name and front to right, your liberty.
Others want to answer. Yeah.
Sorry? Someone has to answer this question. That question, yeah, but that question was put to Jennifer by Frank. He didn't. If you want to comment after the next question, you can comment in your closing remarks. Go ahead. That's part of it.
Can I go? Okay. My name is Gada. I am from Peter McGill. According to the report on the hiring of minority in the public sector, and that's around 2019, only 6% of employees belong to minority groups. If you do the math correctly, that's about 24,000, Quebec has to hire around 24,000 employees in order to reach only 10% representation, while minority groups are 15% in Quebec. How are you going to address these systemic issues? And who's going to be accountable? Because it's a difficult issue to solve. Thank you.
What do you want? This is for all candidates? For all candidates? Or
Whoever would like to respond to the question.
and to whoever wants to respond to that issue. Who's got their hand up? Okay, David went first, Jennifer went second, Colin third, Katya fourth.
Let me try to answer a question in English. So, like Quebec Solidaire is very important for us. We will install rules for all the public organisms. We'll have a base of percentage of embauche of 25% of the minority, visibility, ethnic, and all the minority you have. Also for the people with some handicap situation. So it's very important for us.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Diversity and inclusion is one of my favorite subjects. You're absolutely right, and the way to do that is to adopt laws. There's currently laws in place, but they're not applied. And so we need to make sure that the laws are actually applied so that we can reach the targets that are in place. One of the other things that absolutely has to happen is we need to address systemic racism. It's real, and just because the cap says that it doesn't exist doesn't mean that it's not there. So that's one of the first things that needs to happen. We need to adopt and put into effect Joyce's principle. That is a huge thing that I think will make a big impact in many organizations, including our healthcare network, which is many, many immigrants come and they help us in our healthcare system, and yet they seem to be sont plafonnés, right? So they're stuck, and we need to give them the ability to change. And in order to do that, we need to put laws into effect. And so there are programs and policies, and what we are committed to doing is adopting a law, but a law that is going to encourage our businesses, our société d'État, to put them into place. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to have vacant position either. And so what we need to do is make sure that we're doing it with you, beside you, so that we can ensure that the positions that we're filling make sense. And that doesn't just include people who are immigrants or people who are visible minorities or ethnic minorities. That also includes people that are handicapped. That also includes members of the LGBT community. We need to make sure that we are an inclusive society and not a divisive society, and that means we have to walk the talk.
Katya? Yeah.
So I just would like to highlight that while all the opposition parties stayed quiet at the National Assembly, our party aimed at uniting people, stopping bringing in more aspects to divide. And as it comes to minorities, we believe that even if you won by, 40% of the electors' vote, it's still your obligation to listen to everyone. So I understand there are some systemic disproportionalities that are hard to tackle. Sometimes they say democracy is the dictatorship of the majority, but that's why I think it's also important for a candidate or an actual member of a National Assembly to have a stance that you're not trying to play to only to the people who vote for you, but to those who didn't vote for you or those who weren't given a voice just because they're a minority. And so far, we've been the only ones standing up and giving a voice to minorities, whether it would be on issues that are already mentioned or the stance on COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Katya. Colin, you have your hand up?
Yeah, and to my understanding, 6% would be a high watermark. That my understanding, 0.7% Anglophone, our bureaucracy, and 2.2% from other minorities. So that's about 3% of our bureaucracy, and that's an underrepresentation of about 10 to 1, right? About at least 20% of Quebecers would define themselves as English speakers or allophones or Indigenous. So we need to tackle this systemically, that all governments, whether they be CAC or PQ or Liberal, have stood by for decades and allowed there to be an unrepresentative bureaucracy largely based in Quebec City. The Canadian Party would do several things. One, we would regionalize our bureaucracy in a significant way, have centres, Chicoutimi, Sherbrooke, Outaouais, parts of Montreal, Laval would have new centres, move ministries, not just based in Quebec City, actually have them throughout Quebec. That would and have locals work there in a significant way, and as well have really effective affirmative action policies. That there have been laws, regulations on the books to have a 25% ceiling for minorities in the bureaucracy. Those have never worked. We need to change the way the culture in a very large way to make sure that people are incorporated effectively. And as well, thirdly, another thing that we would do is knock down the artificial impediments to the ability to work for the bureaucracy, which is Bills 21 and Bills 96. So Anglophones and religious minorities are excluded from employment in the public service based on things they can't change about themselves. We would knock down and repeal those bills day one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sam, you want this?
Yeah, thank you. In my situation, we just won a case against the English Montreal School Board for discriminating against my daughter, who's allophone, and we're trying to get her to learn French. That took 4 years that you paid for, the investigation. And so the Human Rights Commission needs to be reformed, needs to have strict deadlines, because we can't, like Jennifer said, we need laws. Well, we have laws. We have processes to go through, but they take forever. They're not accessible, and they have to be accessible.
Yes,
Can I have some question?
You can have a supplementary.
Thank you. To Jennifer, if you don't mind. You mentioned that laws will deal with this issue. I presented some specific numbers, like we have Quebec needs to hire around 24,000 people from minority groups in order to reach 10% representation. How can you be a bit specific? How do laws can address this issue? And within a particular time frame? Because definitely we don't have new positions, new openings, and so on. Thank you.
She posed that question just to you.
So I'll give you a concrete example. In the Sourd-Laurier School Board, there's one Black administrator. Of all of the 72 school boards in the province of Quebec, there's one Black Director General. And we've done many tables and discussions to say, how come? What are we doing wrong? How can we encourage people? So the law is there, but people aren't applying. People aren't going into the positions. And so that's why I say the laws are there. How do we enforce them? And that's why I say we need to do it with you, because for some communities, traditionally, they don't want to apply for certain specific positions. Public security. Public security, there's a lot of people that are of Asian descent, for example, that for them, they wouldn't traditionally see themselves in those roles. Or people of visible minorities. So when we need to change a culture and we need to accompany people, we need to do publicity programs of accompagnement to get people more interested in the rules and the rules in the roles, so that we can actually apply the law. The laws exist, but I think the problem that we've been facing is more societal and cultural and less legal. And that's why some of it should be a penalty, for example, when you know that you have the ability, for example, on a board of directors or an administrator position, when you know that you have the ability to hire somebody of equal competence or put somebody in place who would represent a visible minority, then we need to make sure that those things are happening, and that's where we can apply the law. But I think it's a bigger issue than just putting the law into place.
Thank you, Jennifer. My trusty colleague flips up something, he's got a 15-second card, a 30-second card. Name and part of the riding, sure.
Andy Gorell, I live on Park Place, just across the park. To bring up one of your favorite subjects, what's a mill rate? It's a bet on the future. What's a government budget? It's a bet on the future. You're betting on the future. You have a mandate. You're saying you're going to do this. Children are a bet on the future. We have mentioned in multiple guises, people talking about the labor shortage, the talent shortage in the country, in the province rather. What is an articulatable vision for keeping our children and our grandchildren in the damn province?
Okay. I have a hand up first, Katya second, Sam third.
I agree with you. I just had to send my 21-year-old son to Vancouver to go to UBC because he looked at me and he said, there's no future here. So part of the reason why I want to step into the political ring is to, of course, spend all those years repealing Bill 96 and everything that's telling our kids that there's nothing to bet on living here any longer. And we need to keep our beautiful, brilliant minds here. So I think that the problem and the solution start at the National Assembly to do everything we can to make it so that everybody who is here has a future to bank on.
Heidi, Katya?
So, first of all, I agree with you that any party, when they present a program, it's a bet. And as somebody who pretty much all my friends from school are elsewhere than Quebec, I agree that's an issue. Our party, first of all, sees the way you keep people is you allow them to see themselves in the future in Quebec. For that, Quebec has to stop shooting itself in the foot by language laws, by staying closed off to the rest of the world and actually step up. So in terms of the budget being a bet on the future, we have a rule on the ceiling for expenses that if you want to spend more money in one area, you have to find where you save it in another. And as it comes for economic development, if we're a healthy society, people want to stay here. So we want to take responsibility and develop our natural resources in a way that we control them, but at the same time that allow us to be independent of the rest of the world while growing our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Katya. Who is next, Sam? You have your hand?
Thank you, yes. In my family, we're struggling to get our children to learn French, okay? Someone said something about, well, how can you possibly be here if you don't speak French, right? Well, we were able to get assessments for my kids, and 3 of them have language disorders. That means I probably have a language disorder because I tried to learn. I'm having great difficulty. So, we need to be able to teach our children French, and if they have disabilities, accommodate that. You shouldn't have to go to the Quebec Human Rights Tribunal to get or pull your kids out of the EMSB to get therapy, to get assessments, to get help. And that's what we had to do. We took the EMSB to the commission, and we won our case. You shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't have to fight for 4 years for that sort of thing. We have in Quebec a system where we have schools, private schools in the public interest that have special services for kids. And that's where my children go now. Now they're learning to speak French. Now they'll be able to become Quebecois in the future. Okay, so I think that's one part of the answer. Don't make us sue you.
Thank you, Sam. Colin, you had your Jennifer?
Clearly, we need to create more job opportunities, and to do that, we need to attract businesses. To attract businesses, we need to do things like repeal Bill 96 and deposit new legislation that will encourage businesses to come here, to stay here. We also need to focus on our youth and focus on the richness that we have in the province of Quebec. We're the most bilingual province in Canada. And what we need to do is use that as a tool to attract people to come here, because we have something that's very unique as a service offering. So beyond just learning French, Our youth are not just bilingual, they're trilingual, they're quadrilingual. So we need to start introducing other languages into our core curriculum so that our students will graduate and be able to take on those premier positions. We need to have a strong economy so that we can give back, but the other things with the strong economy is it needs to be circular and tied to climate change. That's something I think it's very important. I know you're shaking your head, but it's a vision. It is a vision of the future. If we don't take care of climate change or our environment today, we've heard from the BAP that all of our dumps are going to be filled in 5 years. And so we need to act on that, and that means it's going to be job creation. Those are the kinds of things that we need to do to attract our talent and stay here. But we need to focus on our strengths and not our weaknesses.
I'm not alone when I reflect on all the family and friends who moved away from Quebec because of political and economic instability here for the past several decades. Statistically, we're 50% of English-speaking Quebecers have left this province in the last 50 years. You can't actually even track how many because they moved to the UK or Australia or the United States. They don't actually show up in our census, so it's actually higher than that. I know personally about 80% of my family lives in Calgary, Toronto, and Vancouver. We need to stem and staunch this bleeding of our youth, of our family, of our friends, of real social capital that can build our society, that Montreal would have 500,000 more people if we just grew at the same rate as the rest of the country for the past 50 years, instead of hemorrhaging our best and our brightest. So certainly the number one thing that any party could do after this election is knock down the artificial impediments based on language and identity in 96, in 21, and 40. Bill 96 is going to lead to massive distortion of society. It will lead, if it's not already led to, another exodus of our young leaving, because to have private sector employment, public sector employment, to get basic health and social services, to get education with the Cat Liberal Amendment on the 3 CEGEP courses will be an impediment to people actually getting a CEGEP or higher education degree. And we need to knock down these artificial impediments to keep our youth here, keep our family and friends at home. We can do so. We can vote that way. We can keep our friends here. Thank you.
David?
Yeah, I will do very fast. It's a very important question, and for this I will just have to say I think we just in the society to take care of young people as they are just part of the society. In Quebec Solidaire, there have been a lot of young people who are working with us, and our plan is about the climate change, so I agree with Maccarone about this. I think all the speech we do, we just need to include the young people with us. I was working at Rivière des Prairies with the Table de Jeunesse, and a lot of the young people didn't feel included in the community, in the decision. And I think what we do in Quebec Solidaire, we're a young party, but we feel we are part of the society, and we encourage all the young people just to feel like that, to create their reality in Quebec, to create the Quebec they want to. And I think to start with climate change is one of the big goals we have together, because we have a lot of young people, they are eco-anxious, and I think this is a good project for us to tell you, this place is yours, so you can do everything you want as possible you can.
Merci, David. Okay, last question. Last question and second to last question, because Nigel Goddard wants a question. Please, your name and...
Hello, I'm Don Ramsey. I live in Shaughnessy Village, which is around Guy Metro and the Centre Architecture. I have a question. I have a statement first with a question that I would like everybody to confirm yes or no, and then I have a follow-up question. So my statement, which should be factual, I just want to state, this riding, Westmount St. Louis, is a evidently very bilingual riding, and Bill 101 does not apply to political messaging. Can everybody agree on that? Ms. Maccarone, yes? A campaign poster?
Bill 101 doesn't apply to campaign posters?
No.
Bill 101 actually applies to all signage. But there is a alternative view. There's two different points of view when it comes to campaign signs, and you're right, it doesn't always have to apply. And I'm certain your question is, why is the English smaller than the French on the Liberal sign?
Exactly. Why do you show disrespect to these constituents?
It's not disrespect to the constituents.
Jennifer, one moment, I gotta rate you a bit. I just wanted to understand the parameters. That's your question.
I wanted to address it to all of them.
So this first question you wanted to address to everybody, right?
I wanted everyone to confirm that this is a bilingual riding and that political messaging, Bill 101 does apply to it. I've got an answer from Ms. Maccarone.
That's a two-part question. What question do you want everybody to answer?
To the parties? Okay. I'll get to it. To the parties that do not have...
No, you're not getting anything. Jennifer's going to finish the answer, but what's your second question?
I was going to say that.
Okay, so stop that, and we'll have them all answer your first question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, or go ahead. And then we'll continue with everybody else.
It's just that it does respect the law, though, because that's one school of thought, but it has been said that legally, if you're going to be putting English and French on your signs, it's important that you respect Bill 101. And so I understand what you're saying. I don't think anybody's going to be running to the police because somebody else hasn't maybe respected the size of the characters on a poster. We made a conscious effort that we wanted to have bilingual signs. It was important. We didn't have to. It was a choice that I made, and I wanted to be respectful of the rules that are currently in place.
Thank you, Jennifer. Who's next? Colin?
I appreciate this question. So language laws do not actually apply to electoral signage during an election campaign. You can have any language you want, just one language or another. You can make it a political statement. We at the Canadian Party have equal, fully equal bilingual signage, English and French, on the same side of the same sign. So once again, respecting Quebecers based on language of their choice, the way they choose to express themselves, instead of acquiescing to an unfortunate status quo that discriminates against people and diminishes human dignity. Thank you.
Colin, who's next? Who wants us next? David?
Thank you for the question. I'm also living in Shawnessy Village, and I totally agree with the 101, and I think it's very important to have this bill because it's make people together. I just want to give you just an example. In Shawnessy Village, you have a multilingual. 1.11% people speak Arabic, 9.5% speak Mandarin, a lot of language, they are different. So I think it's make an union for all of us to having the French language and the prioritization.
And see David, who wants to respond next. He wants to question to everybody. Sam?
Yeah, you should be able to have whatever you want on your sign. Government should not tell you what to do.
Yes, Sam. We done? Because he's got a second question, right? This is your supplementary.
My supplementary was related to the same thing.
Which is?
And Mr. Touchette answered it. Why, for the people who don't have fully equally sized bilingual signs, why aren't they? Why are they showing disrespect to the constituents here? Mr. Touchette has already answered. Ms. Maccarone, go ahead. Do you have more to answer about that?
I did answer your question. So for us, it was important. It was a choice to have a bilingual sign. We could have had signs that were unilingual. I specifically chose to have bilingual signs, and I wanted to respect the law, and so I did.
Do you think it was making it worse by making it 3/4 English instead of not at all?
Okay, that we got to cut off that. You're not going to answer that, Jennifer. Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Okay.
Last question now. My colleague, my brother-in-arms, Nigel Goddard, Vice President of the Westmount Municipal.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I know there's a lot of other things you could have done. Good to see so many faces, members of council. And all of you for choosing to leave other things that you could have been doing to run to make Quebec better for all of us. I don't want to put any particular party on the spot. There's something I want all of us in this room to think about very, very seriously. It's a very serious issue. Climate change. Now, it was mentioned earlier, I believe it was I almost called you Councillor Maccarone, Deputy Maccarone, had mentioned that we're the richest city. I'm a walker, I'm a cyclist, I'm a motorist. Many of you who live in Westmount know the state of our streets is not exactly commensurate with being one of the richest cities. Be honest. Okay? I could easily pick up asphalt from major streets after it rains. Okay? It's shocking. Why is climate change so important for us? Well, it means more flooded basements, like we saw recently on the South Shore, or what we saw a few years ago to our friends in the Ile-Bizarre, Rivière de Prairie area. So, just very quickly, how can you help municipalities, rich municipalities, to actually look or to get the proper funding that they need? I don't know if it's reining back the agglomeration council, letting us keep more of our own money that we pay as taxpayers. I don't know how to do it. So I'd like to hear what your ideas are for proper funding for rich municipalities. Thank you.
That was just a comment, not a question. Okay, so Nigel would like your channel comments up. All right. Yes. Heidi. Sam next.
So Bloc Montreal and Party leader Balarama Holness is very passionate about this $5 congestion fee, which I think there were lots of moans and groans, but to make the world a better place, there's going to be some discomfort. It's not going to be an easy, wonderful kumbaya moment. It's going to be uncomfortable for everyone until you see the results. But the $5 congestion fee is for non-resident vehicles entering the island. It would be free during 7 to 9 morning rush hour, 3 to 6 coming home. His calculations is that it would lead to a 30% reduction in congestion, 20% reduction in gas emissions. It's a start. That will definitely help on the provincial level to funnel down the money down to the municipal level. Because I think that we need to work hand in hand. On the provincial and the municipal, it's like you can't not work together in order to have a beautiful city. It's like good parenting. You need to have everybody on board to have a successful city.
Thank you, Heidi. Anyone else? Sam?
Yes, thank you. The Green Party of Quebec, we want to see, I think it goes beyond municipality, Nigel. I think it's something that the province, that the country has to get behind. We have to stop the burning of fossil fuels. We have to encourage, we have to make it easy, we have to make it mandatory that people stop driving cars. And it's not just a matter of converting to electrical vehicles, because that takes a lot of resources too. That's not vital. It goes way beyond all that stuff. When my father talks about during World War II collecting aluminum to recycle, there was mobilization against this. This is a big deal, and what's surprising is it's only come up now. The last question. I mean, this is incredibly serious, and there's so much to say that with the Green Party of Quebec's policy, but please read it. It's online, and we have to change society. We have to change the culture. We must act. We must get rid of cars. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Colin, thanks. Jennifer, Colin? Has that first, Jennifer?
Yeah, I think it was sort of a two-parter. There was one on climate change as well. And so I just want to highlight one of our, I think a leading policy, perhaps one of the best policies out there for green policy in Quebec at this point in time is to enshrine environmental protection in Quebec's Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms. That's an actionable legal right that people could defend their ecology, defend against pollution, air pollution, as individuals going to the courts or organizations or corporations to defend your right to a clean environment. So to actually enshrine that in the Quebec Charter is something that we're proposing. Secondly, on municipal funding, I think a lot of it has to go, is the way we do contracting in this province is I think it's flawed when you go to the lowest conforming bidder, I believe is the term, right? And so it's very complex contracting. That's to ensure that there is equality, that there's no collusion, etc. But it leads to really poor quality work when you're going just for the cheapest person. You wouldn't go to Dollarama for absolutely everything in your house. For some things it's good, not for everything. And I think that goes for contracting for roads and basic public services. We should have a more complex contracting formula. Also, secondly, we would have a pothole policy as well. That potholes, when you actually fill them in or put new road work, we guarantee for 5 years with the Canadian Party of Quebec. No more potholes.
Thank you, Colin. Jennifer.
It's a very interesting question, and I have to say that one of the things that we pride ourselves on is believing in the principle of subsidiarity, and I believe that those decisions should be made locally. The provincial government does not have a say in how your municipality determines how the roads are going to be repaired or where, but we do give you the financing. So one of the things that should happen, and I say that as if I was a member of the government, right? So the provincial government should be giving more money to the municipalities so that they have the wherewithal to do the work that's required. But when they do those works, they often consult with the citizens, they do it with you because it's your tax dollars at work. So I don't feel that it's appropriate that the Quebec government comes in and says to you, this is how you're going to do the road, and this is where you're going to do it, and this is when you're going to do it. We can, however, give you guidelines in terms of things like what materials should you be using, because as you mentioned, climate change is very important. So there's things that we need to look at, like a review of the Code du Bâtiment, so that we use more materials that are from Quebec, made by Quebec, like Quebec lumber, for example, if we're going to be building. And we need to invest in more programs like Renault Vert. We need to go back and to invest in programs like Rouler Vert, which the government cut. So we want people to get more electric cars, for example. But I do think that the best decisions are made locally, and so I would want to make sure that I put my faith in your city councillors and in the citizens who are going to hold their feet to the fire.
So I think we're the only party that actually doesn't promise any goals because we're eco-realists. Look, we're discussing about climate change while we have 4 rows of projectors being turned on full power, heating us for the last 2 hours. And we have to be real, we need energy. To meet those goals, what the parties don't mention is what you have to give up. I mean, my colleague here did say you have to give up your car, but how are you going to get to your work? Is he suggesting for us to go back in time and reject progress? We need energy for...
Free public transportation.
Okay, Sam, let her speak.
And so the way we see it is it's a global issue. And we need to, the way we see the solution to it is that we need to step in on the methods. So we want to develop our natural resources in order to, first of all, have control of the process and stop importing it from places where it's the way that they're being developed and extracted is not that eco-friendly. Second of all, it allows us to develop the money necessary to transition to a more green and sustainable energy. But we don't make any promises we won't be able to keep. I mean, the governments are being elected for 4 years and they give targets for the next 10, 20, 30. How do they expect to keep them? They're not going to be in power for more than the 4 years the mandate is. Thank you.
Thank you, Katya.
Please let me answer to this question. I will try mostly in French, but I'll start in English. For Québec Solidaire, for the first, il y a comme 2 réponses à votre question. C'est sûr qu'avec Québec Solidaire, on va consulter les municipalités et c'est pour ça que dans notre plan Vision 2030, on a un plan qui est de créer un conseil régional de transition qui va travailler avec les régions, avec les municipalités pour connaître leurs besoins et leurs réalités. Maintenant, quand vous parlez des routes, on pense également à Québec solidaire qu'il faut que les citoyens aient un meilleur choix lorsque vous dites que sur nos routes, on roule, puis c'est peut-être pas à la hauteur de ce qu'on souhaite, est-ce que les citoyens ont un choix aussi de prendre les transports en commun? À Québec Solidaire, dans notre vision verte, c'est devenu un plus grand choix de transport en commun. Et en terminant sur ça, pour moi, Québec Solidaire, on est le seul parti qui a un plan réel pour faire face au changement climatique. Notre plan a été appuyé par 8 experts. Et pour faire un lien avec ce que vous dites, 43% des gaz à effet de serre proviennent du transport. On a une vision transport qui va mettre un plan de 47 milliards de dollars pour donner une meilleure situation de transport en commun dans les 30 régions de Montréal. Ce qui fait que nos routes vont devoir être beaucoup plus dégagées, moins endommagées. Je pense qu'on a besoin d'un équilibre, d'une consultation avec les gouvernements municipaux. Et Québec Solidaire, c'est dans notre plan Vision 30. Merci.
Merci, David. Has everybody had their say on this question? Thank you all. Thank you for your questions. And now we're going to go to the closing statements. And as we discussed at the beginning, we'll just do it left to right. 2 minutes, closing statements.
Okay, thank you.
Sam.
So thank you for organizing this event. It's wonderful to be here. I kind of feel like this is deja vu 4 years ago, right? Where you have the Liberals in free fall, and you got CAC ascending, and I think there's a reason for that. The reason for that is because the Liberal Party is not taking any of this seriously. Today they had an announcement about autism, where they're going to have a study, they're going to have a committee formed to deal with it. And then the committee is going to make its recommendations after they get hired and money gets paid, and we wait again, just like 4 years ago, we waited for their action plan on autism that had nothing. I can tell you what the committee is going to say. Kids need therapy. They need speech therapy and occupational therapy. And I want to live in a society that can provide that. I think our society can provide that. You want Anglos to integrate into Quebec society? Then let them, if they have a disability, like a language disability, then help them. Don't send them to core English and force them to to go out of the English system into the French system like we had to do. Same thing with climate change, right? The Liberals talk about they have to take this seriously and all this, but they have no concrete solutions. Their solution is green hydrocarbons, which is something which might work, but it's not serious, it's not substantive. We need to hold them to the fire. They need to tell us exactly what they're going to do. Get the kids therapy.
Sam. Katya, 2 minutes. Why Westmount should vote for you? Westmount St. Louis should vote for you.
Thank you. So I would like to thank all of you for your questions and for coming here to listen to us, as well as the Westmount Municipal Association for organizing this event. Several issues have come up during this discussion. The concerns for privatization or the tax money people keep throwing at. And I would like to first comment on the general stand of the party, is that we believe in an adult approach. We believe that the voters are all adults, they can make decisions, and that's why the way we can help them is by providing them more money to make those decisions when it comes to the tax cuts, and at the same time by investing into a more free market relationship for tackling all those issues rather than having a centralized system. History has seen it in Soviet Union, and it was the first political regime to disassemble itself, because eventually the government becomes just like a huge obese beast that can barely move. And the other issues I would like to address is that as it comes to the future of use, I invite you all to listen to a lengthy discussion Eric had with Dr. Jordan B. Peterson on YouTube. It came on today. I invite you to listen to it. That is exactly the topic of their discussion. And finally, when one of the citizens, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, expressed his frustration with the Liberals, what I can say is I feel him, because I became an Anglophone while living in Westmount, and the Liberals failed us in action. They may vote against, but they are the ones who suggest the changes. And while we already formed an Anglo caucus and we want to repeal Bill 96 entirely, to stop this divide and to promote discussions and to take action to defend English language. Thank you.
Thank you, Katya. Colin, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be here this evening. You know, I think this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity we have to set the record straight. But this is a referendum on Bill 96, this election. I think that when people talk about Quebec, well, they mention regressive language laws, urban poverty, and quaint countryside that are at odds with the modern world, or will they remark with envy and us with pride that we led a movement to harness the power and dignity for the 21st century. That the Canadian Party, I believe we made incredible progress towards our goal of restoring respect in Canadian politics, Quebec politics. Respect for the Canadian Constitution, respect for religious rights, respect for language, respect for young people's right to decide how and where they want to learn and what they want to become, respect for the teachers and doctors and nurses and nursing assistants who care for our youth and for our seniors, but also love their religion, respect for our brothers and sisters and ancestors who fought for and defended our great country. The future of our ability to exist in Quebec and our nation depends on what we do in this election. I think there's been a lot of things said tonight, but I think we need to set the record straight. But a vote for the Quebec Liberals in this election is a vote definitively for Bill 96. They voted for it time and time again, made it worse with amendments, and would keep 98% of the law if elected to office. The amendments were actually Liberal Party policy that predates Bill 96 by 1 month, Article 16 of their 27-point plan on French language, which makes it explicit on 3 new courses for English youth and English language subjects. I propose that we bring our friends and family home again to rebuild a better Quebec. And we can reach out to our French-speaking neighbors, friends, family, co-workers, and colleagues, because they'll join us to build a better Quebec, because they too share our aspirations for a better life, better opportunities for their children, and are proud of their language and heritage. Thank you.
I'll make this quick, short, and sweet. Montreal, we have it all. It's beautiful, it's got everything, and yet the powers that be want to destroy what we have. And I will do everything to make sure that I preserve the beauty that we have. 50% of the gross domestic product is in Montreal, our value, our worth. Bloc Montreal wants to take 20% of that to create a piggy bank to be able to make beautiful progress. And like Mayor Solidaire set precedent with granting Montreal metropolis status, I think that Montreal has its own beautiful uniqueness and it needs to be protected. And we are just incredible and we need to do everything to protect.
Heidi, David, 2 minutes.
J'invite peut-être juste à faire attention à votre micro, monsieur du Parti vert, qu'on entend une résonance. Génial. Thank you very much for this invitation. I will be honest with you, take off my paper, and on parle de l'éléphant dans la pièce. As a member of Quebec Solidaire, it's not easy to be here. I know Bill 96 was hurt you, and I know my party they vote for. And maybe you saw in the news, I told them, not sure. But you have to know they're not against English people because I was not here. I talked with my party, we want to know about your community. They vote for the French, but not against English community. I'm very happy to be here because I want to let you know there are a place for you in Quebec Solidaire. And sometimes it's not look like that because the thing is going very fast. But I told you, do not worry. Quebec Solidaire, there are a place for you, and they understand maybe why some people are angry about the decision. For the next thing, I would like to conclude to say Quebec Solidaire, we are the official party for the environment. I made a lot of interviews with people from McGill, Concordia, and what they asked me is what's the future for us. And they are interested by Quebec Solidaire about our social voice, the environment, and I think you should join us about this because now we just finished the COVID crisis, but the most important crisis is the climate change. And with the 8 experts who signed our plan, we are the official party who are ready to fight for the climate change. Thank you for the invitation.
I want to thank the organizers and I want to thank all of you for your excellent questions. It's been a pleasure to exchange with you. I've always lived here. I'm raising my kids here and I'm not going anywhere, so I have a lot of hope for the future and my intention is to continue to fight for you. But I can't do that alone. I want to do that with you. And I know that there's a lot of areas for improvement, but I reiterate, I cannot do that alone. Together we're better. Alone we'll go faster, but together we will go further. And I want to be the change that you want to see. And I know that it's a difficult time for our democracy, and there's lots of people on the stage here who are looking to cover your vote. But I want to remind you again that when we work together, we are better. And the reality is, unfortunately, a vote for a protest party means no real power. It means no real influence. The National Assembly is all about law and it's all about time. And when you reduce the amount of time that you have to advocate on behalf of the communities that are important to you in the National Assembly, you reduce your ability to advocate, period. You will not have any real influence. And I would much rather be part of the big tent, working together and having arguments and maybe breaking bread with people that I don't like very much, but at least being able to carry that influence and be that voice. And the only way that we can do that is together. And I know that that's a difficult conversation. I know that it is, and I know that we need to do better, and I want to be that change that you want to see. But again, I can't do it without you. So we're going to need to work collaboratively. We need to stop the divide of our community. With all due respect to everybody who's here at the table tonight, a vote for a protest party is a vote for the CAQ. And as much as I like David, the reality is that I'm very concerned that Quebec Solidaire, we don't want them to be the official opposition. They are a separatist party. And these are things that I think that we need to be concerned about. And it's not a personal conversation. What I want to do is continue to be your voice at the National Assembly, but do it with you, not against you. You have concerns? Please come and see me. I promise you I will address them. You want us to do better? Tell me how. Be the change that you want to see. This is probably one of the most important elections that we're going to be facing. We need to protect our democracy, and in order together to do that, we're going to have to do it together. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. Please go vote.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you to all the candidates. Merci à tous et tous pour votre temps, pour votre dédication, pour votre service et sacrifice. And thank you to all of you for coming here tonight. And let's keep on doing all these events. Don't forget a little golden bowl if you feel like making a contribution. Thank you.